Hello and welcome in. It's Adrienne Lawrence filling in for the great Nina Turner, and this is Unbossed. That's right, we're bringing it to you on Tuesday. And while we got it, please do not excuse me, I want you to feel everything, but do not forget to subscribe. Also share the stream, maybe send some comments. I love it when you leave the comments because then I get to give you the shout outs on the breaks. All good things. And what is a really great thing is the contributor for Rebel HQ who is with me. That's right, David Schuster. What's up, David?
Adrienne, thanks for teeing up an unbelievable news day. Good grief, this is crazy.
It is a crazy day, and it just seemed pretty quiet until, of course, we got the breaking news for you about Donald Trump being found liable for sexually abusing and defaming E. Jean Carroll. Yeah, that's right, and the jury awarded damages totaling $5 million. This headline here really does seem to say it all. And the thing is that the Manhattan jury, which is composed of 6 men and 3 women, did not find that Trump raped Carol, but did sexually abuse her. And that basically means that the jury didn't find that there was any intercourse there, but that there was some kind of sexual contact, which would somewhat make sense because E. Jean Carroll testified that she could not feel penetration from Trump's member, but she could feel his fingers inside her. Well, also, she happened to find that the former president had defamed E. Jean Carroll, saying that she lied about saying that he assaulted her, and also did so maliciously, which is why the jury included punitive damages in the award. And although Trump didn't even show up to testify, well, again, he was found liable in this civil suit where the standard is lower than beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard. This one here, it's more likely than not that E. Jean Carroll was telling the truth. It is a big day and a big win, as we know that defamation cases are hard to prove, rape cases are hard to prove, and yet E. Jean Carroll did it and won it, not even without the fact that this also included a former US president and that rape occurred more than 30 years ago. So it's a very, very big day, especially for people who spoke out against their abusers or other rapists. And so David, I'm wondering, how does this verdict sit with you?
Well, I think $5 million is a big deal. I mean, as you were reminding me before the show, I mean, E. Jean Carroll did not set an amount, but for the jury to come back with that amount shows that not only did they believe that Donald Trump had in fact abused her, but that they were sickened by it because they could have settled for a lot less. The one thing that bothers me a little bit is that I do wish the jury had found that Donald Trump had quote unquote raped her, because now Donald Trump politically gets to say, I settle lawsuits all the time for even more than $5 million, and I was found not guilty of raping anybody. So he has his talking point, but this is still a big deal to anybody with any common sense. And I don't think Donald Trump's deposition, which was played at the end, did him any favors. He kept saying, "Oh, well, she's not my type. I would have never been with somebody like that because of," and then he impugned her looks. To me, that was disgusting on so many levels, and I think it also inflamed the jury and perhaps pushed them towards this verdict.
Yes, absolutely, and it didn't help him that he confused E. Jean Carroll for his ex-wife, Marla Maples, especially as he had said, "It's not my type," but then he's out here saying, "Oh, this is my wife in this photo," which it wasn't. And also to make sure that I'm clear, E. Jean Carroll said she wasn't sure whether he had penetrated her with his member, but she did know he penetrated her with his fingers, which is why there is that sexual abuse liability being found here. And it'll be interesting moving forward because, as we know, there have been so many women in the double digits who have come out against Donald Trump doing something to them in the form of sexual abuse. And yet it seemed like so many members of the GOP just kind of ignored it, pushed it under the rug and kept it moving. But now that we actually have this finding of liability on the books, I'm wondering, David, do you think that this is going to impact Trump's presidential run?
That's a great question, and I think we're going to find out pretty quickly with the town hall he's doing. Does he still have his sort of curveball and his various pitches that he uses to sort of show his charisma and get people to look away from his garbage? We'll find that out. I mean, I think Donald Trump is going to be tested by this news. He's going to be tested by some other things. But my gut, Adrian, unfortunately, is I think people sort of have baked all of this into the cake. I think most people sort of know that Donald Trump is demeaning to women, that he has assaulted women, that maybe he has done even worse. He certainly has ridiculed women, and yet it seems like among his supporters, they don't care. They just want somebody who's gonna drain the swamp, get rid of the deep state, do all the sort of malarkey that Donald Trump keeps talking about. And because Donald Trump has the charisma and the ability to turn the focus away from his troubles and towards what he says he wants to do, I just feel like it's not gonna peel away his core support. And in the Republican Party to win the nomination, he only needs about 30% of the primary voters, and then the field will divide the rest. And that'll be the same way Donald Trump won the nomination back in 2016. So I feel like this is just gonna be something of a blip for Donald Trump, even though for the rest of us, I certainly wouldn't want something like this on my record. I don't think I would want any family member, friend, or politician that I supported to have been found guilty, to have been found liable of sexual abuse like this.
Absolutely. You would think that most rational people would say this person shouldn't necessarily be leading our country. But then again, I don't necessarily know that he has that many rational followers out there. But I definitely know that we will all be waiting to see how another Manhattan jury responds to Trump in the upcoming months as he faces those fraud-related indictment charges that have been filed by Alvin Bragg. We will all be hostages again to the Trump malarkey that goes on. And speaking of hostages, well, Republicans are doing what they do best when it comes to the debt ceiling, holding the entire country hostage. That's right, and pushing their own personal agenda is really what the goal is. Last month, the debt ceiling was predicted to hit its breaking point sooner than anticipated. And what's formerly known as the X date was anticipated later to be in 2023, but now it could arrive as soon as June 1st. Well, President Biden, he's meeting with Congress today, but Republican Senator Tom Cotton could not resist other than taking a shot at Biden ahead of those talks. Take a listen.
The real question, Brian, is whether Joe Biden gets off his stubborn and unreasonable position that he's not even going to negotiate about spending reforms or other measures that would accompany a debt ceiling increase. Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans are to be commended for passing a bill that would both raise the debt ceiling in a responsible fashion, but also reduce spending by almost $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which we need to do to address our spending crisis. But Joe Biden, for months now, has said he simply won't sit down to negotiate. It makes me wonder if he or his minders are worried about him sitting down to negotiate one-on-one with Kevin McCarthy and if he's capable of doing that. But
I love that little underhanded jab about capable, suggesting that Biden doesn't have the wherewithal or is maybe a little bit too senior to engage in debate. That's not the case. Anyway, we do know it is the case that Republicans have been making moves. That's right, over the past couple weeks. Just check this out. Last month, Republicans narrowly passed a proposal known as the Limit, Save, Grow Act. The proposal, which is unlikely to progress through the Democrat majority Senate and which the president says he would veto, would eliminate Biden's student loan forgiveness plan and claw back pandemic relief spending. It would also repeal most of the new renewable energy tax incentives codified in the Inflation Reduction Act. And many have dubbed it the debt scam bill. Yeah, because it's cutting off various programs that help numerous everyday people, programs that could be on the chopping block if Republicans get their way. Check this out by CNN. Most affected by the potential debt default, Social Security payments, federal employees and veteran benefits, financial markets, borrowing costs, the economy. Yes, so the latest comes as Republicans and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy have their eyes set on President Biden's signature. Climate legislation, that's right. This is what they're focusing on. And The Guardian breaks down exactly what those cuts could look like. The Inflation Reduction Act dedicated $369 billion to climate and renewable energy policies, constituting the largest down payment on climate policy in US history. But the GOP proposal would gut the majority of those provisions. The McCarthy bill would repeal the 4,000 credits for used vehicles and phase out some of the $7,500 credits for new EVs, electric vehicles, remove tax breaks for building solar panels and other clean energy infrastructure, and put an array of other climate incentives on the chopping block. Now, the proposed cuts could help McCarthy curry some favor with far right wingers, of course, but that would also have a terrible impact on some red districts across the country. The measure would come at great cost to Republican voters. The Financial Times last month found that red congressional districts have secured 5 times more funding for clean energy projects from the Inflation Reduction Act than blue districts. Politico found that 2/3 of the major renewable energy projects announced from the spending bill's passage through January 2023 were slated for Republican-led districts. The result would be the loss of more than 77,000 clean energy jobs across 72 Republican-held districts. That sounds like a lot to me, big time, David. Can you tell me, how does this resonate with you?
Well, it seems like Republicans are not going to miss an opportunity to essentially cut off their own nose to somehow spite and save their face. I mean, this is what the Republicans constantly do. Instead of sort of gaming this out, I think they're just sort of looking at the narrow, climate energy bad, and we need to somehow spending bad. And so they're like Neanderthals. Never mind, though, that this is not very complicated. Even for Americans who don't understand what the debt ceiling is, or the default, or what happens if the United States can't pay its debts, even if that's too confusing for a majority of Americans, which it may be, I think it's easy for Americans to say and to understand, well, Donald Trump passed the debt ceiling 2 or 3 times. So what is it with the Republicans now? And so I think politically this will only hurt, because if the United States in fact does go into a default, people are not going to blame Joe Biden. They're going to know it's the Republican Congress that did this, and a whole cascade of problems is then going to start to pile up. And so I think politically this would be really stupid for the Republicans. I think some Republicans actually know that, including Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader of the Republicans in the Senate. I think this is all going to come down to him and Joe Biden in the White House trying to figure out, okay, what is it that we need to give to some Republicans in order to get the centrists on board? But there's no way I think Mitch McConnell and the grown-ups in the Republican Party are going to let the United States default.
Yeah, I sure do hope not. And I know that Mitch McConnell is meeting with Biden today, but it definitely feels like they are playing a game of chicken out here in the public. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a matter of the bravado or the posturing for party politics, but at the same time, as far as I'm concerned, it's just kind of annoying. When I think about the fact that we just came out of, to the extent that we're out of it, some kind of mini feeling of a recession where the egg prices go through the roof and gas prices and things that we as taxpayers could feel on a daily basis. And so the thought that, hey, well, we had to adjust our budgets, we had to get it together, and you all can't get it together. I just feel like they're asking for a lot from us as taxpayers to have to endure their nonsense at this point. I don't know, do you think that all of these antics in any way are shifting voters potentially for that next election about people who are just like, they're kind of over all of the antics?
I'm not quite sure yet how it's going to play out politically, but you raise a really important point in terms of economics, and that is our economy essentially does better when there's a certain level of predictability, when there's stability built into the system, and investors and businesses and consumers have a certain understanding of, okay, this is how things are going to be for the next 12 months, 18 months, 3 years. When you start to inject a default into all of this, then the instability goes out the window, and that panics a lot of people. And I think that's the part where Americans can start to sort of pick up on if there's uncertainty, if the markets react really badly, we may start seeing some horrible reports from Wall Street. That's the kind of thing that I think drives a lot of people nuts, because this isn't a big deal. You raise the debt ceiling just like you did under Donald Trump, and you let people try to figure things out and negotiate on other issues. But to hold the debt ceiling hostage, I think that's where people, even if they don't quite understand what it means, I think they understand the uncertainty that will come with it, and that's never a good thing politically.
No, not at all. And to be honest, I just don't have, I don't have any more F's to give. The thought is that there is mass shootings just about every day. We're dealing with a bunch of complex issues, and their attacks on the LGBTQ community, so on and so forth. Like, I just feel like there are so many more grave things going on, and for y'all to be out there fighting like toddlers, like I ain't got time. It's just, it's exhausting, it's annoying, and it's not cute. But there is something that is cute, and it's me, and you'll see more of it after the break.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
Been honest with him, like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it, but instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Welcome back to Unbossed. It's Adrienne Lawrence filling in for Nina Turner, and I am one of those members And I want you to be a member. That's right. Get some TYT membership in your system. You know you need it. We need it too. Challenge the establishment, report on immigration issues, produce your favorite live shows. That's right. Support our mission for positive change. Sign up now at tyt.com/join. Also, get that progress report. Yes, subscribe to TYT's weekday morning newsletter, the Progress Report, for the best progressive news analysis and reporting. We cover the most important stories. Scan this QR code or visit tyt.com/newsletter. And for podcasts, that is right. I'm Bosses everywhere. And you want to get it, go ahead and do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you are listening to the podcast. And go ahead and click and give us that 5-star rating. And those who I give a 5-star rating to are definitely the TYT members at tyt.com. Len says the only statement from Fox News about the verdict today will probably be Trump found not guilty of rape. Wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised. And Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, says, LOL, David, I'm in love with you even though I'm white, but I'm not a right-winger. Just because I'm old enough to be your mother doesn't mean you can't love me back. LMAO, I'm sorry.
Wow, I just say love for everybody. It has nothing to do with age, has nothing to do with gender, nothing to do with race and religion. It's about what's inside, my dear, and I love you right back.
Fabulous. Twitch says, Auntie Dragon on Twitch says, always sad to not see Nina, but this duo is a good, close second. Love you both. Love you too. All right, Sam Lynn, the kind dragon, says, love the throw pillows, Adrian. Thank you kindly. And one Diablo Verde, David, the female Republican magnet. Bro, you got a calling.
You know, in that show that I did with John Idarola, he was referring to it as a cougar bait. You know what? I look, my friends are sort of thinking, David Schuster, really? So I'll take it. Fine by me.
I respect it. Also, you don't like music. You don't like my music on YouTube. Says Adrian has the nicest teeth I've ever seen. Need to go brush. You're so kind. Eve says, oh my, congratulations to all. Thank you, Miss Carol, our hero. And we are sorry that Trump attacked you and you're suffering for your suffering, but we thank you. Thank you, real hero. Women rock. Yeah, definitely today is a very, very big day for individuals, particularly those who spoke out during Me Too and thereafter for holding people accountable. I am a fan of it. And someone I would like to hold accountable more is the Republicans out there in Texas predominantly, because we're still mourning as a nation the tragic shooting in Allen, Texas that stole 8 lives. Now the families and officials have now released the names of those 8 individuals. And as we continue to learn more exactly about what happened at the Allen Premium Outlets Mall. Now here are the names of those that have been released. We have Daniela Mendoza, 11 years old, Sophia Mendoza, 8, Cindy Cho, 35, Kai Cho, 37, James Cho, 3, Christian Lacour, 2, Ashwari Thakonda, 26, Elio Kumana Rivas, 32. That's right, you saw a number of children in that. Those are the lives that were taken on Saturday. And as we continue to learn more about the victims, well, CBS released 7 out of 8 of the photos of the individuals who we just named. And here they are. And many of the victims were children. That's right. And also some of them were parents and included their parents, including the Cho family. Their older son, a 6-year-old, was wounded in the shooting but survived. But he has now lost his mother, his father, and his brother. He is alone now in this world because of the monstrous acts of one individual. And several of the victims who were injured still do remain in the hospital and their lives are forever changed. Now the individual who has been identified as the shooter is 33-year-old Mauricio Garcia. And investigators are continuing to look into his history, and it appears to be riddled with violent ideology. The Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism says social media posts indicate that he was obsessed with violence and embraced misogynistic, anti-Semitic, and white supremacist ideologies, sporting large SS and Nazi tattoos. Posts he made on a Russian social media network also suggest he had been researching the mall and planning the attack for weeks. And among information about the shooter circulating was the detail of him wearing a right-wing death squad patch, which we showed you yesterday. And so as these authorities continue to discover new information about the gunman, many people are still grappling with what happened at the mall and how a mass shooting, how it could possibly happen there. And including one person named Steven Spainhour. He is an ex-police officer and also a US Army officer. Steven Spainhour described rushing to the shopping center after his son called him saying he had heard gunfire. He arrived before emergency responders and performed CPR on some of those who had been felled by bullets. Spainhour is now passionately arguing in favor of meaningful gun control. Take a listen.
I don't know what the gunman's problem was. I don't know his motive, but it wasn't mental health that killed these people. It was an automatic rifle with bullets. That's what killed them. I'm a gun lover. I have guns. I'm a former police officer. I'm a former Army officer. But these M4s and AR-15s, they've got to get off the streets or this is going to keep happening. And we've got to stop that at some point. It could be you. It could be your family member. I never imagined it would be me. I never imagined it would happen in my community. But it did, and we've got to stop this type of carnage.
We've got to stop. That's exactly right. The thought that this is mental health is so far from accurate. Mental health issues are all over the world. They're global, yet we're the only ones having these mass shootings. That should probably tell you it is the guns. And also some jarring reality that Spainhour faced when he went there to help save lives. Well, he recounted the horrors that he first saw firsthand. The first girl I walked up to was crouched down, covering her head in the bushes. So I felt for a pulse, pulled her head to the side, and she had no face. That's a realistic look at what these assault weapons can do to someone, to pretty much take off their face and to kill in mass. It's something that does not need to be in the hands of civilians. And the thought that our nation will continue to allow this to happen, even though it's taking the lives of children, of adults, of parents, needlessly, it's incredibly disgusting. David.
Well, look, I mean, even if I were to accept Republicans and people who the gun lobby that says, oh, there's evil in our midst, and there's nothing we can do about evil in our midst, and there's nothing we can do about people with mental health. And let's just, for argument's sake, let's suppose there's nothing we can do to stop all people with mental health problems or all evil, but we can at least increase our chances of surviving when they decide to go on a carnage. I would much rather have somebody who's evil or with a mental health problem try to shoot up with a revolver or a baseball bat or a knife than an AR-15. And maybe they do kill 1 or 2 people, and that would be 2 people too many, but it wouldn't be 8, it wouldn't be 10, it wouldn't be 20 like you saw at here in Connecticut at Sandy Hook. I mean, it goes on and on. At a certain point, people gotta realize it's not about trying to catch people with mental health. It's not about trying to stamp out evil. It's about trying to take away their opportunity to inflict maximum damage. And we cannot have this go on and on. And I think there was something of a turning point this weekend, Adrian, because the pictures were so graphic and they were immediately available all over the internet. And I think when people see what violence is really inflicted by these AR-15s, and then you hear these stories about the damage that's inflicted, I think people are just so grossed out and sickened. This is gruesome stuff. Enough already. People are like, even if I support guns, get rid of the AR-15s, ban them as we did during the Clinton administration, and mass shootings went down for 10 years. This isn't difficult stuff.
No, it's not. And the thing is that you cannot say that you need these AR-15s under the Second Amendment, which again, I've always said, and many have said, is completely bastardized. But the thing is, it's like it's thought of, oh, well, I'm a hunter, I need guns. You cannot hunt with an AR-15 because of the amount of damage it does to an animal carcass. So why do you need this when there are plenty of other guns that are out there that can be in your possession? And something super interesting that I saw yesterday, which is actually extremely disappointing, is the FBI's training video for mass shootings for civilians, basically. I posted it on my Instagram page. You can check it out. It's at Adrian Lawrence is my Instagram handle. But the fact is that the training that the FBI provides, the video that they show, has the person with maybe a Glock. And someone responded and said, I would love to see what the training guide is for when the person is operating with an AR-15. And I responded, there isn't a training, it's just showing a coroner on the screen. Because that is the reality, and we just saw that in Allen, Texas. And the thing is, though, we might want to bear in mind to some extent, to the extent it can be positive, there has been some change in Texas in terms of efforts to make change as far as it concerns purchasing semi-automatic weapons. This is the latest headline from Axios. Check this out. Tennis House panel passes raise the age gun bill. Yep. So the bill was passed by the House, and this is House Bill 2744. It's pushed by the relatives of the victims of the Uvalde Elementary School shooting. The gunman there was 18. And the bill is looking to raise the age. Here's more details on it, even though we know it could still face several hurdles before ever becoming law there in Texas. A Texas House committee advanced a bill that would raise the minimum age from 18 to 21 to buy certain semi-automatic rifles. The chair of the House Select Committee on Community Safety had refused to hold a vote, but changed his mind. Before the vote, gun control activists flooded the Capitol Rotunda with signs demanding that lawmakers advance the bill. The bottom line here is the bill is now eligible for a floor debate in the House. But the unfortunate reality here is that even if the bill were already law, it would have done very little to stop this past weekend's mass shooting, since we know that the alleged shooter was 33. David, what do you think about this effort? Even though I think it's like, what is it gonna do?
I think it is a valiant effort, and raising the age from 18 to 21 would certainly do something. It wouldn't do everything that I think is needed. But here's the other part about it is a lot of Republicans say, oh, well, we need mental health. Well, your own governor in Texas, Abbott, cut $200 million for mental health programs. So again, at the same time you're raising the age, how about restoring the $200 million to the Texas budget for mental health screening? And oh, by the way, the shooter, we found out he was rejected by the Army. He was red flagged because of mental health issues, because of instability. That should be enough we should have a database that should say to somebody, hey, this guy can't have weapons, never mind an AR-15, he can't have any weapon. If he was kicked out of the US military, they found him not fit to be able to carry a weapon. Why on earth is he able to then purchase an AR-15 at any age? It makes no sense.
No, it makes no sense whatsoever. And I love that you brought that up, in part because when I had read that, it automatically made me think, well, what did they think was a mental health issue? If it's the fact that the man was a brazy, Nazi wanting the SS, that's not a mental health issue. You're just dealing with someone who has internalized white supremacy and is looking to uplift this Aryan world out there in some way in the thought that it is more superior. But that's not a mental health. So I would love to know what the military said, because we really do need to have these conversations so we can stop saying individuals like the young man who shot up those individuals at the grocery store in Buffalo and had his manifesto targeting Jews and Black people. He was not mentally unstable at all. He was suckling at the teat of white supremacy. And so until we have those very honest and very direct conversations, I really don't think that we are truly going to advance in terms of understanding what our mental health needs are, and also what actually poses a threat to the rest of us by way of mass shootings. But then again, those are just my opinions. And as far as the opinion is, there are some predators out there in the GOP, and I think that that's fact at this time. We know that the GOP loves to push the narrative of groomers and that there's so many threats out there toward our children, when it's really just oftentimes members of their own party. Yeah, and they get caught grooming and then all of a sudden they vanish. Watch this.
We find that Representative Slayton has engaged in inappropriate sexual conduct with a subordinate. That behavior was induced by alcohol that Representative Slayton provided to that 19-year-old subordinate. Representative Slayton then acted systematically to influence that subordinate and multiple witnesses and obstruct the investigation into the matter to the detriment of both our chamber and those who work here. As you will read shortly, this committee unanimously recommends that the House discipline Representative Slayton by expelling him from a member of this body.
Woo, expulsion. That is the gravest of punishments for someone in legislature, and it was handed down for now former Texas State Representative Brian Slayton. Yeah, that's right. He did not get to leave on his own terms. This is what we know per the Texas Tribune. Pressure had mounted on the Royce City Republican to resign since Saturday when the House General Investigative Committee released a 16-page report finding Slayton, who is 45 and married, had engaged in inappropriate sexual conduct with this aide. In the written investigation report, the committee said Slayton gave the 19-year-old intern and another young staffer alcohol at his home, that he had sex with the intern after she was intoxicated, and that he later showed the intern a threatening email, but said everything would be fine if the incident was kept quiet. Sounds pretty predatory to me. And it's interesting too, because in terms of this expulsion, yeah, that is the gravest thing that could happen professionally, but I'd love to see some things happen in terms of criminal prosecution, because it doesn't sound like she was able to consent. But of course, I'm sure former Representative Brian Slayton would argue just the opposite, which I don't know how he'd do, but whatever. Anyway, we also know that he asked a fellow lawmaker to keep his behavior secret as well. That's something the committee found. His resignation letter, which he presented to Governor Greg Abbott, did not address his relationship with the girl at all. He just said that he looks forward to spending more time with his family. And a number of his supporters and even fellow conservative Texas Republican Steve Tuff turned against him. Yeah, this is what he said. Inconceivable. His resignation gave no apology to the young woman he violated, his wife whom he betrayed, or his district that he failed. No remorse. No acceptance of responsibility. He's the victim that rides off into the sunset. That was the resignation of a narcissist. Absolutely, it was. But still, as far as I'm concerned, it was recommended for him to be expelled. And I think that that's often the best you can get from these Republicans. But as far as Slayton's attorney said, well, last month he claimed that the claims were absolutely outrageous and false, which isn't surprising because this is also his stance. Slayton was among the most socially conservative lawmakers in the chamber and had been one of the session's loudest voices for cracking down on drag shows and decrying drag artists. It's groomers who want to sexualize children. He said children don't need to be focused on sex and sexualization, and we need to let them just grow up to be children and let them do that as they're getting closer to being an adult. That's really interesting since clearly he was preying on a 19-year-old child by giving her alcohol despite her being underage and then having sex with her when she was unresponsive. Yeah, well, the GOP isn't just trying to target drag queens, but also be the scapegoat for their groomer behavior. Yes, that's very accurate. According to this AP report, they had found that between 2017 and 2021, at least 120 state lawmakers and 41 states have faced public allegations of sexual misconduct or harassment. Among those cases was an Idaho lawmaker who was eventually convicted in 2022 of raping a legislative intern. It is incredibly disheartening. And as I speak of often when I speak of workplace sexual harassment, which can include an assault, rape, is the fact that when you have these young people in this environment, what you're going to see is a lot of predatory behavior in terms of attacking individuals and doing what Slayton did in terms of telling this girl, you need to keep quiet. Don't say anything if you want to protect your professional aspirations, your trajectory. And that's not what these young people deserve. They deserve to be in a situation where they're learning and growing professionally, not put in instances where they're suffering lifelong trauma. David.
Well, I think it's so interesting, and we've seen this time and again, that sometimes people who are the most hardline doctrinaire in terms of being extreme in their positions turn out to be the ones who, if you're the most anti-gay, then it turns out you're the one who's leading a secret, LGBTQ life. If you're the most concerned about drag shows, you're the one who's having an extramarital affair and sexualizing children. And so there's something about our society and the repression that goes on that causes particularly lawmakers, people who are seeking a certain celebrity, to go ahead and say, oh yeah, I'm gonna prove to myself that I'm really not that way because I'm just gonna project. I'm gonna project my anger onto other people like the LGBT community or the trans community, whatever it is. And yet these are people who are leading just incredibly twisted double lives. And the fact that they can't be honest with themselves, I think psychologists have a field day. And secondly, there's a part about this that was a little bit disappointing to me, in that when this first came out, there was some suggestion that there were some Republicans who were gonna try to rally around Slayton. And it was only after there was certain polling that was done by other Republicans that the Republicans said, okay, yeah, no, this is a bad thing politically, we're gonna have to dump him. The fact that there's certain people that just can't come out right off the bat and say, this is wrong, he needs to go, and they have to wait until they put their finger in the wind, to me, that is almost as revolting.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that they're driven by what's a good look as opposed to what's actually the right thing to do and a showing of having some integrity and character. But I'm really not surprised in how his fellow Republicans responded, largely because the thing is it takes a village to protect a predator. They've known who he is. Most people know who he is without a doubt. You have to know, because individuals like this do not operate under the stealth of night. They show you who they are. And the thing is that this is also not one-offs type of situation. That kind of predation, that is a behavior. So I'm sure there are others out there who have probably been victimized by this individual. And I truly hope that his wife, and I know that they had separated at one point, I hope she makes a wise decision for herself and their child in terms of moving forward, because as far as I'm concerned, he ain't it, he ain't got it. Any closing words, David, about the GOP and their predation?
I mean, look, these things do have a political cost, and we've seen before, particularly congressional races, that when there's a major political scandal of a sexual nature, it can hurt that party, especially when that party is being deemed to be something of a hypocrite. And so I think Texas politics is a fascinating one to watch, and I think this is perhaps an even bigger political earthquake in Texas than a lot of Republicans had wanted to appreciate or acknowledge.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to do more acknowledgement of your awesomeness as we read your comments during this break. We'll see you soon.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Welcome back to Unbossed. Adrienne Lawrence filling in for the great Nina Turner. And again, I gotta remind you, I have to remind you, membership, why not join? You are enjoying it, come get more. Hear the important issues, the favorite shows. That's right, support our mission for positive change. Sign up now at tyt.com/join. And let's see from a few of those who have joined. Yeah, Wolf Dragon Donna says, I agree with all the David fans. Sorry, another cougar, ha ha ha, love you both. Bro, I don't know what you're doing to these women, but I'm just gonna stand back and be in awe.
You know what they're doing, Adrienne, is they really don't have a crush on me, but they're all like saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna try to make Schuster blush. No, I'm gonna make him blush, and they're trying to embarrass me. That's fine, it's okay.
It's love, it's genuine. Mickey C, the Silverhead Dragon said, giving those girls alcohol is illegal, right? Having sex with a woman who cannot consent is illegal, it's rape. Having sex with a subordinate is at best unethical. He needs to be charged, without a doubt. And as far as I'm concerned, that's how his state can really show up and show that they are supporting women and also holding individuals accountable. Charge him. As far as Twitch goes, well, Molly B. Ceramic says, and Bober is so proud of her cordless hole puncher AR-15 t-shirt. AR-15 ammo shreds the body, holes the size of large grapefruits. Exactly, there is no point in civilians having it. Neon Death 07 says Slayton is a legacy name in Central Texas. It needs to be a legacy name in Central Lockdown, because it's like, put him in lockdown, like put him somewhere. He needs to be in lockup, lockdown, put him everywhere, but out on these streets, because that man is a predator. As far as YouTube goes, Richard Kale Gelsrud, sorry bro, it's the K in front of the things, I can't help you, says, I hunt and own firearms and have since I was 14. I'm 57 now. Mental health is not just the reason. Since Kyle Rittenhouse got away with it, it has become more of a problem. Thank you so much for making that observation. It's incredibly disheartening and disgusting how our our leadership is selling individuals' lives so that they can get coins from the NRA, but it's also not necessarily shocking because we know how the GOP operates, especially when it comes to capitalism. And speaking of capitalism, down there in Florida, the Sunshine State, well, Governor Ron DeSantis, he's officially signed a multitude of bills to stop the Chinese Communist Party's influence in his state. Watch.
I think we were the most ambitious state in the country in blocking land grabs by CCP-related entities. No farmland, no land near critical infrastructure, nothing. We don't want the CCP in the Sunshine State.
All right, now I have a few concerns, but I will hold them in abeyance until we learn more. So we know this per The Hill. In a news release, DeSantis signed Bill SB 264, 846 and 258 into law, noting that he called on his state legislature last year to build upon its efforts to combat corporate espionage and higher education subterfuge carried out by the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, and its agents. Here's more on SB 264. 264, referred to as interest of foreign countries, will prohibit governmental entities from contracting with foreign countries and entities of concern and restricts conveyances of agricultural lands and other interests in real property to foreign principals, which include the People's Republic of China and other entities and individuals affiliated with the country. I'm sorry, I just can't hear anything other than xenophobia. I don't know, maybe it's a translator on my end, but I can still be convinced otherwise. Anyway, so there are other countries on concern in terms of DeSantis's list, apparently, including Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria. So according to Fox Florida affiliate WTVT, the legislation will allow Chinese citizens with non-tourist visas to acquire single parcels that are smaller than 2 acres and at least 5 miles from military installations. Also, it will prohibit the sale of property located within 10 miles of military bases and other critical infrastructure, seaports, airports, power plants, and water treatment facilities to interests tied to the Chinese government or other foreign countries of concern. Anyone connected with the Chinese government or the CCP, well, is also barred from purchasing real estate in Florida under its new laws. And that really isn't all. Check this out. Well, the Florida government went ahead and put out this nifty little flyer here of Stop CCP Influence to pretty much have people mount up and gang up against Chinese people. That's how I see this happening. Anyway, well, the other major bill, SB 864, it could also affect another group, that's students. SB 64, referred to as agreements of educational entities with foreign entities, will bar state colleges and universities and their employees and representatives from accepting any gifts in their official capacities from a college or university based in a foreign country of concern. State colleges and universities are also prohibited from accepting any grant from or participating in any agreement or partnership with any college or university based in a foreign country unless the partnership is authorized by the Florida Board of Governors or the State Board of Education, the news release said. Now that ban includes student and faculty exchange programs and dual degree programs. This really says a lot to me again. This seems to be an attack on education, like we know DeSantis has been doing, a way to control people from learning more, especially from other cultures, other countries, and it just seems to reflect ignorance. And again, on the whole attack on anyone of Chinese citizenship, basically preventing people from owning property. Well, it's going to cause a lot of people to think that they need to take actions into their own hands. And they're going to start discriminating against Asian people. And I won't even say Chinese people because people aren't gonna care. They're just gonna say, hey, you look different from me. And so I'm not going to sell you property or I'm not gonna get involved with you. And it's just gonna be discrimination layered upon discrimination. David.
I think it's discrimination full scale, and it's disheartening. It's disgusting that this day and age, if Ron DeSantis is really concerned about Chinese influence in America, then he should articulate what are his concerns. Is he concerned about TikTok? What is it that he's worried about? But to go out of it this way by banning people from buying properties of land, by stopping people from having, their university have a relationship with universities overseas. I mean, that's stupid policy. It's also really dumb politics because now all of a sudden that student who is, say, at Florida State, who was planning to spend junior year abroad, all of a sudden there's a whole list of countries now they can't go to because if Ron DeSantis gets his way, the university will not have ties with the university that might be sponsoring this internship or whatever it is they may do their junior year. It is so dumb. It is so short-sighted. And again, all it does is fuel the hatred and give a signal to the right wingers in Florida that, yeah, it's okay to hate Chinese people or hate people who look Asian or hate people who look different from you. That's where Florida's going.
Absolutely, and it's nothing but an ignorant place to be, especially since China, people from China, Chinese government only owns like 1% of foreign-owned land, yet Canada is the biggest foreign investor in American land, owning 12.4 million acres. But clearly, individuals in Canada tend to look more like those in positions of privilege here, so it's okay. Anyway, I can tell you that there is very much privilege in the conversation as it concerns abortion, about who can speak about it, and if a certain person does, what consequences they'll face. Yeah, we're living in that kind of day and age. And what happened to an individual in a Texas prison really speaks volumes. Check out this headline here. Texas prison guard punishes a woman for talking about abortion. Yes, an incarcerated woman in a Texas prison is being kept in isolation and punished for talking to other women about abortion. That's right, the punishment was doled out in mid-April, shortly after the woman, Quanetta Harris, began sharing information about sexual health and preventing pregnancy with other inmates. This per Jezebel. Harris told The Nation the ordeal began when she heard several younger women talking about contraceptive methods in a way that was riddled with scientific inaccuracies. Harris was a nurse before she was incarcerated, and she chimed into the conversation to offer the other women clarification and also to educate them on how to protect themselves from unwanted pregnancies and STDs, which is an important thing because we know that a lot of prison guards like to engage in, let's say, non-consensual activities with the inmates. Anyway, we know this also per Jezebel. At some point, the topic of abortion arose when one young woman asked Harris about partial birth abortion, an inaccurate and stigmatizing term that anti-abortion activists used to refer to abortion later in pregnancy. Harris said she gave them the facts without realizing a prison guard was within earshot. There's no such thing, she told them. At that point, a guard whose name Harris didn't catch, but whom she identified as a young man in his 20s, intervened, berating the women and yelling at Harris to shut up and threatening not only to discipline her for violating prison rules, but even a new criminal charge, which could lead to additional prison time. Now, Harris is already in solitary confinement, but in the middle of the night, a lieutenant moved her to a different isolated cell, closed off from others and facing away from the prison yard. For 3 days, she was cut off from making any phone calls. She currently is unable to send or receive any e-messages on her prison-issued tablet, forced to rely on prison staff to give her printed out messages that are days old and in tiny print. Harris, a mother, told The Nation that she fears that any time the prison will cut off her communication with her kids. All she did was talk about abortion. That's something that's not legal at all. It's provide people the information about their body and how it works. And she spoke truth to power, but I guess it was too much truth to power as far as this inmate monitor individual goes. David.
Yeah, it sounds like this is not about abortion at all. This is simply about hatred, a hatred that a prison guard has for some of the inmates who actually know something and might be educating each other or helping one another. And that probably challenged the prison guard and has caused him to have hurt feelings because maybe he didn't know what he was talking about and felt threatened somehow that women would actually learn something from one another, that they might know something. Whereas in prison, I suppose there may be some people there who are prison guards who simply they like the idea of being able to dominate and control women because of something that's going on in their own mind. It is sick. And I just hope that this woman's family, her community can somehow rally behind her and that this story can sort of spread awareness and somehow help her out.
Absolutely, because she should not be in any way punished or confined in a cell. But let's go from correction officers to police officers. Yeah, so the LAPD released the names and photos of 9,000 cops, including undercover officers in a dangerous assignment. That's right. And this comes after a journalist, Ben Camacho, made a public records request for the names of officers working undercover. And you would expect the request to be denied because it could impact law enforcement and their safety. But the LAPD actually answered and they provided the information. It's just wild. Check this out from The Guardian. The mistake arose when the city responded to a public records request by releasing the names, photographs, and badge numbers of more than 9,000 officers close to the entire force. An attorney for the city assured the journalist who had fought and won a legal battle to obtain the records that images of officers working in any undercover capacity are not included. But that turned out not to be true. Yeah, that's right. The issue comes as the officer whose information was released, well, all those officers, they weren't warned about it. None of the officers, undercover or otherwise, were given advance warning or offered an opportunity to raise objection to their public information request. Many of them have reported threats to themselves and their families and have told the police union that they are fearful for their safety. They are considering quitting the force. Now, this issue that we know now that this information has been put out there, it could also be a matter of putting these officers in harm's way clearly, in addition to really almost erasing all of the hard work that they put in their undercover work. I'm kind of flabbergasted that the LAPD, well, no, not that the LAPD, I'm flabbergasted that any institution would do this knowing that it jeopardizes the health and safety and the professional work and that investment of their officers. Like, this is gross. I also, one other thing as well is that I want to put it on the journalist. Like, why would you release that information when you knew good and well that this is gonna harm people's lives? Like, I get that you got it and that's sweet and that's good and all, but my God, do you have a conscience? Like, I couldn't roll with that. These are people, they have families. David.
Yeah, there's a certain responsibility that the journalist, I think, had to his community and should have showed his own sort of judgment and perhaps exercised some restraint before releasing this if he did. I'm not surprised, though, that the LAPD or any police department would necessarily make a mistake, though, when it comes to public records. And so many journalists and auditors and people out there who have tried to get public records have been met with people who are so incapable and so incompetent and provide the wrong information or don't provide any information. And then when they do provide information, it's filled with errors. And so I can sort of imagine that there's somebody in the public records department at the LAPD who's responsible for figuring this out, for figuring out how to comply with this order that they turn over the information, who doesn't realize, you know what, I could turn over this database, but it's got all these pictures of these guys. Well, that's supposed to be where the line is, right? You release the names, but you're not supposed to release the pictures. And if somebody's not paying close attention and satisfying this public records request, then a mistake like this happens. And this kind of mistake, though, happens on a different scale at police departments every day, trying to get transparency from police, from an institution that often does not like transparency, doesn't know how to provide it, doesn't know how to provide it with safeguards. It is next to impossible. I hope the LAPD can learn from this and other police departments can learn from this as well, because yes, certain things must be kept out of public, certain things must be kept private. But at the same time, there should be a responsive effort to accommodate when you are ordered to provide certain information, you should do it, but don't make stupid mistakes.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't be surprised, nor would I shame on an officer who's had their information released for suing the county, the government, because it's like, that was reckless. You knew I was working in a position that required I be undercover to protect my safety, and I continue to go into these situations where I am generally unsafe, and yet you made that even more dangerous for me by virtue of this recklessness. But I can tell you for right now, the only one doing the suing is the LAPD police union. Yeah, they filed a complaint, and they're also trying to sue Ben Camacho, the journalist who made the public records request, along with the police accountability group that posted the information online. But as we know, the case is likely to be dismissed. But at the same time too, still, I would really advocate for using better judgment, because just because police tend not to be our friends, they tend not to look out for we the people, they still are people. And there are people in their lives who do not deserve to be harmed. And that's what would happen when you release all of their information and photos of them. It's not right. And like one of my girlfriends, her husband was undercover NYPD narcotics for 20 years. And the thought that, knowing what went into his work, and the thought that if he were ever outed in any way, how it could impact her and their 3 young children, it's disgusting. Anyway, David, I know it's absolutely wild, but I also know that you are wild out here on Rebel HQ. What you got? What you doing lately?
Adrian, we just put out a video, and by the way, kudos to Adrian Lawrence. She was the original contributor to Rebel HQ who proved that this Facebook program, YouTube program would work. So Adrian blazed the trail, and the rest of us are just sort of following along. But we just did a video today, Adrian, about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was caught lying, and that may be no surprise to a lot of people. Think, oh, well, she's lying every time she opens her mouth. But no, the Georgia Republican in this particular case, she entered her lies into the congressional record, which is a different order of magnitude. And it's something that's pretty simple. It's about when she experienced a threat of a mass shooting at her school, and when there was an act that was passed by Congress requiring schools to be gun-free safety zones. And Marjorie Taylor Greene got the sequence wrong, and she's been blaming Joe Biden for years for what she experienced. It's absolute nonsense, and it's the kind of stuff that's so easily checked. And so it's just, I mean, it goes to show, I mean, for people who like videos where you can see Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert or police interactions or constitutional issues or the news of the day, provided with some reporting and some analysis, Rebel HQ, both on Facebook and on YouTube, to see me and the always amazing Adrienne Lawrence.
Yes, you said it all. Thank you so much, David. And thank you all for watching. I will catch you here tomorrow, and you can catch David and I on Rebel HQ. See you later.